First thing you need to do is make sure you know what the image that is currently serving as your logo looks like. You're going to need to identify it in the file system in just a moment here. Next, go over into Template Manager. Because this all takes place on a per template basis, you need to be absolutely certain which template you're currently using. So I'm using the default Joomla 1.5 template right now. Let's go into my local store of the images folder within that template, and based upon the thumbnails here I can identify that image. It's not always called this, but now I know the file name of it, and I can check by right-clicking on it, selecting properties. I can see the dimensions of it. Again, it's not always called that. You have to get a visual cue to identify it here. Next, if I create my own image in Photoshop or Illustrator, give it the same name, and when I was creating it, I made sure that I was creating an image of the same dimensions. Well, I'm using Core FTP here now to transfer over the new image. Core FTP is my favorite free FTP client. Just make sure you rename that original file so you can get back to it, that image, and then drag over your new image. And then if you do a refresh, well, nothing's changed because the browser is simply pulling the old image out from the cache. So we have to clear out the cache. This is now effectively telling our browser, hey, there's new content here and we need you to load in. So now that the content's cleared, there we go. So my new image is now showing up. We've got a good working, simple solution here. But what if I have an image here that I've created that I wasn't really concerned about the size? I just wanted an image to be this big and I want to use this image. Well, you can see here it's a bigger image in this case. It's got the same file name, but the dimensions are different. Let's clear the cache again there. And well, the image comes up, but as you can see, it's obviously being clipped. It's taking on the dimensions of the old image for some reason. So let's go into the cascading style sheets or CSS folder of that template and find a CSS file here. It could be called template, it is in this case, or layout, something along those lines. It's pretty obvious which is the master CSS file. The way to know for sure if you've got the right one is to simply open it up and do a search for that file name of the original image that we're using here. So that's the image for our logo. So we're saying, hey, CSS file, are you using that image? Oh, you are, so this must be the right CSS file. So what this CSS tag here effectively saying is we want to use this image and we want to give it these dimensions. So if we just simply edit the CSS file to take on the dimensions of my new image, let's go into that CSS folder, the template in Core FTP here, and rename that original CSS file so I can get back to it if I want it. And then we're going to drag over my new CSS file. Let's do a refresh here. You don't need to clear the cache for CSS files to get loaded each time. There we go. So there's my new image. So now I can dictate whatever size I want for the logo. You can see in the CSS file here that not only do I say what dimensions I want, but because the actual image is cited here, the file name of the image, well, nothing's stopping me from creating my own image. And that image can be whatever I want to call it. It can be not a PNG, it can be a JPEG or GIF or whatever I want to make it. And again, I've got different dimensions for that file. So let's edit the CSS file to reflect the changes in my new image now. Paste over there that new image file name. It could be in any path. I'm leaving it in the images folder, but you can put it anywhere. Just make sure you get the path right, and then change the dimensions of that CSS tag to match. Let's save that. We're going to copy now over my new CSS file. You might want to have backed up the previous version and keep backing up so you can always get back to where you were just a moment ago. Let's do a reload. And that didn't work. Oh, I failed to actually carry over my new image, so I had to drag my new image into the images folder of the template with core FTP here. So let's drag that new image over I've created. And refresh now. And there we go. It's not pretty, but proof of concept here. I can do whatever I want with images at this point. What if I have a flash animation here? Now, they come in pairs. This is the Swift, the actual animation, and this is the HTML below it that actually calls the code and embeds it in an HTML page. So let's look at that embed code that's used in the HTML page. Well, that's a lot of code. How do I get all of this code that would embed the SWF in this CSS file? Well, the answer is you can. That's one of the limitations of CSS. So the way around this is to open up your template, find the index.php file, open that guy up, and now what we need to do is find in that index.php file exactly where is mapped this div tag in the CSS file. It's called logo in this case. It could be called anything, but the div tag in this case is logo. So it's got a div ID of logo there in the CSS file, matches it to logo. So it's like code replacement there. The HTML says, hey, call the CSS, replace it there. So what we need to do is copy over all of this embed code and simply drop it in between these div tags. Now, the code doesn't always look like this in the index.php file. This is just the methodology used here. You're going to have to play around with it. So it's not necessarily a div tag. Maybe it's a span tag. Maybe there's not even a div tag. I'm just showing you that this is the methodology you use. Now, the problem here is in that embed code, it's giving a relative path. The HTML is expecting the SWF to be in exactly the same file, but it won't be in this case. So we need to actually say relative to the root of the Joomla instance, where is that SWF file going to be? Well, I'm going to put it in a folder called Joomla images. You could put it in whatever folder you want. Just make sure that you alter the path accordingly. So using core FTP here in my Joomla root, which is public HTML for me, I have a Joomla images folder that I cited there that I'm simply going to drag that SWF file into. Next, I'm going to go back into my template, and I'm going to back up that original index.php file. And now I'm going to drag over my new index.php file. And let's do a refresh. So now I've got a flash file in my template showing up. So this is a good progress. The only problem here, of course, is you can see this, the old background for the CSS tag is showing up. So in this case, I need that div tag still because it places exactly where I need that SWF to be. So all I need to do is comment out that background image. And again, this isn't always the way you do it. This is just the methodology you use. You're going to have to play around with it. Let's copy over my new CSS file and do a refresh. And there we go. So now I can do a flash file. I think we've covered all the bases here, and you can leverage these examples to suit your own needs.